I love training. After 20 plus years of being in the gym 5 days per week, training is still one of my favorite things to do. But my lifestyle, it isn't the same as it was when I was in my teens or even my 20s. I love training, but I'm not spending 2.5 hours in the gym anymore. Even if I had the time to do that, which I don't even want to train that long. These days, 60 minutes is perfect for me. Now, if I'm dragging that day or I have a harder workout, sometimes the workout could be 90 minutes, especially if I need a little more time to warm up. But personally, I make it a goal these days, 60 minutes max per workout. But here's the thing. I don't want my progress to suffer just because I have a time limit for my workout sessions. And the good news is, if you want to limit your training time, or you don't even have the time to train longer than, let's say, 45 to 60 minutes, you don't have to sacrifice results. You just have to be smart about your programming. So let me break down exactly what you can do in the gym to maximize your results while focusing on taking the least amount of time to do so. There's going to be 5 key points that I want to cover. Exercise order, exercise selection, body part pairing, rest times, and intensity techniques. Let's start with exercise order first. Most people never take the time to consider how exercise order can affect the entire flow of a workout. Properly ordered exercises should drastically cut down the time it takes for you to warm up for each exercise. As a result, that cuts the entire training length down. For example, if I'm training chest, let's say that workout consists of flat barbell bench press, incline dumbbell press, a machine press, and a fly movement. That's exactly how I would personally order it for that day, as bench press is the exercise that I need the most time to warm up for, regardless of where it's placed in the workout. It could be first, could be last. It has the highest injury risk if performed incorrectly. It's a movement that I'm going to be using the heaviest loads on during the entire workout, and it's a movement where it requires basically the entire body to stabilize. So needless to say, you need to be warm on this exercise, and you need to take your time warming up. For me, on bench press, that would be likely 3 to 5 progressive warm-up sets. That's gonna serve to warm up the chest and the shoulders and the triceps and set my whole body up for that training session that day. Now, once I'm warm and I begin performing my working sets for bench press that day, I'm gonna move over to my next exercise much more smoothly and efficiently. Something like an incline dumbbell press now is not gonna take a ton of time to warm up, especially because I just warmed up for flat bench and did my working sets. The last chest workout I did, this was the exact order of exercises. I started with flat bench and then I moved into incline dumbbell. And because I was warm from barbell bench press, I only needed 2 acclimation sets to get my body used to the heavier loads to go into my working sets of incline dumbbell. That means for me, I grabbed the hundreds and I did an easy set of 6 reps just to feel the weight, to also take my pecs through the full range of motion of the movement. And then I grabbed the 120s and did a moderate set of 4. Just to expose my body to heavier weight and to mentally prepare myself for the set. That's all I needed for warm-ups for the incline dumbbell press. And then I went into my heavy sets with 120-pound dumbbells for sets of 10. Now, had I started with incline dumbbell press, I probably would have started warming up with as light a weight as the 40-pound dumbbells, working my way up to the 120s. And if I did that, and let's say I went into bench second, I'd still need to perform the same warm-ups for flat bench that I did when I started with it first. So I'm not gonna just walk over to a bench and start with 315 pounds just because I did dumbbell presses first. That wouldn't be smart. So by ordering those 2 exercises this way, I'm significantly cutting down on time in the gym to do the same amount of total working sets. Now the next exercises for chest, the machine presses and the flies, again, everything is already warm. So I only need 1 to 2 acclimation sets here. No warm-up sets, acclimation sets only to expose my body to the weight and to get used to the range of motion. Of course, also to get my mind mentally ready for the intense sets. After that, I load a bit more weight and I get right to it. If you do this correctly and pick your exercise order accordingly, you're gonna warm everything up first early in the workout, and then you only really need a few acclimation sets for each exercise after. Now, this should sound pretty much straightforward, and that's because it is. But before I move on to the next topic, I wanna give you an example that's a bit more outside the box here. If you have a muscle group that's generally always stiff, or it just takes a ton of time to warm up for the movement, a great example of something here would be like an RDL, a deadlift, or any hip hinge movement. I personally have a lot of my guys perform this movement second rather than first. That's because there's one movement that, if done first in the workout, will dramatically shorten the workout time needed for a heavy hip hinge movement. And that is a hamstring curl first. So I actually have a lot of my guys perform hamstring curls first before any deadlift variation. Think about it like this. When you walk straight into the gym and you're stiff, It's usually going to take your body a decent amount of time to get moving properly in any deadlift variation, but it's not going to require a ton of time to perform a hamstring curl properly. Usually 1, 2, or 3 hamstring curl sets to warm up, that'll get you going. So if you can bang those out really quick and then get right to your working sets, you already knocked out one exercise on your list for the day. Now, when you walk over to the deadlift bar for your second exercise, your hamstrings are going to be super warm. And you're going to need way less sets to work up to your working weight on any hip hinge variation. Now here's the thing, there's no right or wrong answer for exercise order. But as a general rule of thumb, the movements that are going to need the most warm-up time should be performed early in your workout. And you want to make sure that each exercise you place in order will allow you to flow through the workout efficiently. Remember this, if your goal is to keep your workout time down, every exercise you put in a specific order should be there for a specific reason. Strategically place your exercises in order so that you move effortlessly from one exercise to the next. Next point is exercise selection. Now obviously, you want to pick exercises that recruit a large amount of muscle fibers. These are best for hypertrophy, and it's the exact reason that something like a bench press or an incline press builds more muscle set per set than something like a fly. Same thing goes for a barbell squat or a leg press versus a leg extension. But again, if your goal is to save time, you want to be basically thinking about exercises that knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. For example, let's say that you're performing 10 sets of chest per week and you need to cut down your training time. You should now pick your tricep exercises and your shoulder exercises that are going to work to your advantage. Let's say all we have is isolation work in our program for triceps currently. If we swap out 2 of those isolation exercises for, let's say, a compound like close grip bench press and dips, both are still great tricep exercises, but we're now also getting additional volume for our chest work on these movements, while we're still primarily training the triceps. And what about shoulder presses? Let's say that we're doing something like a typical dumbbell shoulder press here, and if we swap that out for something like a high incline shoulder press, we're now still getting the most tension on the front delts, but a lot of indirect work on the pecs as well. And if you do this correctly, you might easily be able to cut your training volume for chest down from 10 sets a week to, let's say, 8 sets per week, maybe even 6, depending on how many sets you do per movement. And that's because you're getting plenty of chest work even when you're training your triceps and your shoulders when you pick the exercises correctly. And this is one of the exact reasons that I don't personally do much direct front delt work, because every press I'm doing for chest, and especially every incline, is hitting those front delts very hard. So in my case, I just usually move right into side and rear delt training after hitting the front delts with pec work. So pick your exercises correctly, and there's a ton you can do with indirect work for each movement. Great examples, tricep compound movements will also work the pecs and the front delts. Chest compound lifts will also heavily target the front delts. Upper back compound lifts will target the rear delts. Now, don't get me wrong, you still need to do direct work. Don't turn into one of those guys that thinks you don't need to train the arms directly or the shoulders because you're doing your basic compounds. Just understand that you can make your workout time more efficient by picking your exercises smartly. Next, let's talk about pairing body parts in your split. Something like a push-pull leg split, that works very well for cutting down time, just like picking the right exercise order does. Training your split this way allows you to not only warm up your chest on chest exercises, but also the shoulders and triceps, which you're going to train after. So naturally, after you finish training your chest, the warm-up time you need for shoulders and triceps is going to drastically decrease than if you were to train them on their own day. Does that mean that push-pull legs is the best way to train if you're short on time? Not necessarily, but some guys will pair very large muscle groups together that require a ton of warm-up time. Think about combining something like legs and back in a session. This also has the same drawbacks from some popular programs that are basic full body training or even upper or lower. After you finish off one major body part, you really still need to warm up all other body parts when you move to the first exercise for that muscle group. Let's say I'm doing back and legs in the same day. I'm gonna have to do an extensive warm up for my rows and my hip hinges. And then if I'm moving on to quads, doing leg presses and squats, I'd still have to warm up those quads and those knees like if I walked into the gym fresh and it was the first exercise of the day. Now, this is not a bad thing, especially if you have the time for that. But again, I'm not looking to be in the gym for multiple hours at a time. So that type of training is out for me personally. Now, if you're stronger and you're more advanced and time efficiency is your goal, that's a major case for moving away from something like full body training or even upper lower. Simply training less body parts in a session will naturally cut the time down. But the major reason for that is it's going to cut the warm-ups needed for each muscle group down, resulting in shorter workouts. Let's talk about rest times. You might think I'm going to tell you 30 seconds rest, or that if you're resting any more than 60 seconds, you need to pick up the intensity. I'll say this over and over again. If your goal is to maximize muscle growth, do not perform your next set before you're ready to do so. For most guys, performing intense sets, 2 to 3 minutes after a hard set of compound lifts and 1 to 2 minutes after a hard set of isolations, that's the bare minimum. I don't care what you have to do to shorten your workouts, but shortening your rest between sets should never be one of them. That's the quickest way to turn your muscle building session into a cardio session. Those boot camps that your mom, your wife, or your neighbor go to, those are great for health, but none of them are getting jacked from their 45-minute cardio and toning class. You're here to build muscle, so perform your sets intensely, then rest until you're recovered to do the next one productively. And finally, let's talk intensity techniques. Utilizing something like supersets for opposing muscle groups, pairing, let's say, a set of chest and then moving immediately to a set of back and then resting. That can be a great way to cut down on time. And this is an extremely old school technique that has been around forever. One that I don't really see many guys use today, but the ones who do use it, and some of the guys that hate on it, they're almost always doing it wrong. And that's why it can definitely be a poor tool to use if done incorrectly. Now, a lot of guys might train, let's say, chest, which their workouts consist of bench press, incline press, and flies, and back, which might be pull-ups, barbell rows, and pullovers. Now, those guys will just try to superset bench press and pull-ups, and incline press, and barbell rows. And they wonder why they're not getting great pumps, why their performance is actually getting worse, why they're feeling exhausted and their workouts are worse than usual. That's because you're placing two very taxing movements back to back. Even though your chest is resting when you're moving on to rows, and your upper back is not being directly targeted when you're bench pressing, you still have to recover systemically from each movement. That's why pairing opposing muscle groups together in superset fashion can work, but not when it's two very large or very intense exercises paired together. A smarter way to do this would be to pair one taxing movement with another easier exercise. Let's say that we're training the chest and back twice per week and we want to superset chest and back training. You can do one chest focus day and you could superset that with less demanding back exercises, and then you could have one back focus day where you superset that with less demanding chest exercises. Think heavy chest presses, superset with cable pullovers, machine rows, or face pulls, reverse pec deck, etc. Then one heavy back day where you're doing your pull-ups and your rows, and you're going to superset that with easier chest work. Think dumbbell flies, pec deck, and machine presses. Again, like all of the tips I gave so far, this is not a plan to be set in stone, and there's a ton of flexibility here. But the key is to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it in the gym. You should always have a reason for it. That will dramatically cut down your training time in the gym. Implement these tips and make more progress in your training in less time. And if you want access to all of my training programs, my old school mass gain system, you need individual help with your training goals, you need your questions answered, and you want direct access to me and a group of guys all with the same goals, join my exclusive community, and I'll help you reach your goals personally. Click the link down below to join. And as always, if you want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.